So this next hand was against a villain who I had history with from earlier in the day. We had been playing a long time on different tables, and he had got the better of me. He's playing relatively snug and opens under the gun, and it folds around to me with ace queens, so I have a very clear just call here. And he was opening about 13% under the gun. Now we flop ace king 7, and again the action is really standard. It goes check bet call, and the turn brings a flush card with the ace and the king of spades already on the board. So I decide to lead here. I think some of the reasons are pretty clear. One is we don't want him to check back a pocket twos with a spade type hand. We would just rather him fold, and it gives us some options in general moving forward. So without saying too much, I decide to lead. Now villain calls, and we see a blank river. We check to him, and he bets pretty large at this point. The pot's pretty big. We've seen 3 streets of action. So I don't think calling here is ever an option. I think that we're not getting nearly the right price against this betting range to think about calling. So that means that our decision is between raising and folding, and normally we could fold here, but a few things are going on. One, a 13% opening range probably doesn't have that many flushes. Probably at most has 3 combinations of flushes here: the queen jack, the queen 10, and the jack 10 of spades. So he's not capped, but he's certainly close. He can rarely have a flush. 2, we know that he's value betting here. He opens tight under the gun. This board really hits that range. He's put in 3 streets of action. He just called the turn. So I think it's very reasonable to think that he's always value betting, and a lot of those hands are really strong, like ace king, pocket kings, sets, and 2 pair. And the other thing that should be reasonable for us to believe is that he thinks we are aware that he's value betting. For one, he's showed up with a lot of great hands in the day that we played so far. He's never really been caught bluffing. He's always had the goods on us. And 2, the nature of the positions and the nature of the action make it very hard for him to ever be bluffing here. With all that in mind, I decide to shove because I think he just so very rarely has a flush by virtue of his under the gun raise first percentage and the fact that the ace and the king of spades are on board. Now, we've done something unusual in this hand, that being donk leading the turn, and because we did, that sort of opened the door for us to represent the flush that we would like to. It's not a line he's going to see often. People check call and then donk lead turn. And therefore, I think when he does see that, he's going to be able to construct a narrative such that it makes sense for me to have a flush. So with all that said, the other thing that warrants mentioning is that he had got the better of me hours ago in the morning session, and it had been some time since then. So I didn't have sort of the stigma of tilt or being on a bad run. I don't think that he would think we were any longer in that moment. And 2, I don't think he would think that I would just go crazy here. It's very hard for me to have a bluff. We know that. But there's no reason for him to think that, I'm turning something into a bluff here at random, given how much the better he's gotten of me. Usually, players at these stakes, when someone gets the better of them, they either tilt or they just back off and get back to playing their game, letting the other person, do what they want to do, whether it's 3-betting or isolating a fish more often, something like that. So I don't think he's really used to people continuing to play their game, and basically I don't think he ever expects me to get out of line in a spot like this that so obviously hits his range very hard. So again, we have this concept of being polarized. We have this idea that it's very hard for him to have the nuts, though he has a very strong range. And we have the idea that I'm polarizing my range to represent the nuts and almost nothing else. And lastly, of course, there's the idea that for me to have a bluff range, I would have had to turn a hand into a bluff. So There's no missed draws I could have, really, that could bluff here. I have to have turned a hand into a bluff to make this play. And there's no reason for him to really suspect that.